closer, I'm Nancy Gregory. I'm the plant disease diagnostician in the clinic based at University of Delaware in Newark. There were a couple things I wanted to update you on with soybeans today. I actually brought some samples that you can look at with a hand lens if you're interested in looking at some plant disease specimens. The first thing, I don't need to tell all of you that it's been very hot and very dry. Because of the drought, I think what we're seeing is some beans that are maturing a little faster. Everything is maturing a little bit faster this season. Better. One thing I want you to think about with your fields this year is that the early maturing or short season beans, we had quite a problem last year with seed quality on those early group 3s. If you're growing those and when they mature, you want to go ahead and get them out of the field if you can. The longer you leave those mature soybean varieties in the field, the greater chance of some seed quality issues that you'll have with some of the fungi that come in and cause that seed decay. Some of the phomopsis and the other purple seed stain, if you've seen that on the soybeans when you harvest them. So if they do mature early, see what you can do about getting them out of the field rather than letting them sit there any longer. One of the other things that I've seen this season is charcoal rot early. Usually we see charcoal rot in mature beans. It's often worse in drought-stressed beans. So this year what we've got are beans that are maturing earlier, and it's also been dry with the drought stress, and I've seen charcoal rot already. It's starting as kind of a dark area on the still green stems, but that'll progress, and what it does is plugs up the water conducting tissues in the plant. It'll cause an early death of the plant. Then you have the little resistant bodies that the fungus produces, which end up in the soil, can stay in the soil for as long as 3 years. Corn rotation helps, but charcoal rot also goes to corn. It doesn't persist as much when you've got corn planted in there as it does with soybeans. But I just want you to be aware that I have seen the charcoal rot earlier, several weeks earlier this year than we normally do see it. So let's see. Then I also want to talk to you a little bit about viruses in soybeans. The viruses that we have in soybeans are carried by various insects. The bean leaf beetle carries the bean pod mottle virus. Joanne tells me the numbers of that bean leaf beetle are a bit lower this year. The populations have not been high, but that's a virus that you're not going to see when the weather's hot. You're going to see it when the weather cools down. There is another virus that we saw for the first time last year, soybean vein necrosis virus, and that virus is carried by thrips. We've seen 1 or 2 reports of it this year. The thing is with the virus diseases, once you have them, there's no real control. There's no way to cure them, there's no way to control them, but we really don't have any data in this area on yield loss. We really don't know what the yield loss may be from some of these plant viruses coming in. The fact that the insect populations are lower is a good sign. Insect control, as you know, controlling thrips or aphids or bean leaf beetles in a field is difficult with timing, and you never know what those incidence levels are going to be from year to year. But we just don't have the yield loss data to know whether those viruses are of any consequence here. By the time you see them, it's too late to do any type of control. So I just wanted you to be aware that you may hear that some of these viruses are out there. The other thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today is soybean sudden death syndrome, which is another fungal disease. The leaves will turn yellow to red, kind of an interveinal chlorosis, and the plants will die off early. It used to be that we saw that only in cool and wet seasons, but we've seen more and more of it in different areas in the past couple years. There have been reports in the literature of a higher incidence of this sudden death syndrome being linked to glyphosate usage. Now, I did some research on, through the journals, and saw a couple posters at a meeting I went to 2 weeks ago, and really no one knows. You see research promoting both sides of this story. But what I would encourage you to do, if you have had sudden death syndrome in your fields in soybeans, is make this just a part of your good record keeping. Keep good records on how much glyphosate you apply to certain areas, and you would be our best judge in the future of whether there are any trends with this. Most of the research that's being done is out of Illinois and Ohio. You can hear both sides of the story, whether or not these glyphosate levels do contribute. But if you think about most plant diseases that you get in soybeans, many of them are more pronounced in stressed plants. So anything that you can do to keep your plants from being as stressed, which is hard in a soybean field, it isn't like you can just go out there and turn on the backyard sprinkler. But anything you can do to keep those plants, keep the fertility up, with the spacing, space the seed properly, and just give them any chance to have less stress on the plants, because the stress makes the opportunistic plant pathogens that come in, gives them an easier time. So I can't stress enough just the value of some of that good record keeping, because when we go back, say 3 years from now, it would be really nice to have you be able to track back through and say, hey, yeah, I did put extra levels of glyphosate, or I had sudden death syndrome in this field, it was a cool wet year, never saw it again. That type of information really helps us. We can do so much with plot work out here and research plots around the state, but the feedback from you is very, very good information. Okay, one last thing I do want to talk about is sample submission to the Plant Diagnostic Clinic. You're always welcome to send samples in through the county offices, through Corey down here in Sussex, or Philip in Kent County. We don't have an ag agent currently in Newcastle, but if you can get it to the university, I'd be glad to take a look. If you do send in a sample, it's best to send in a sample that's marginal between healthy and diseased. Don't send me a completely dead sample. Completely dead is completely dead. So, it's a dead brown branch is hard to tell anything from. So you're welcome to send samples in anytime, through extension. There is currently no charge for a plant diagnosis, and that's part of the feedback that I talked about, because the more that I see on a yearly basis, the more I'm aware of what's out there and what the trends are in the stresses and the plant diseases that we're seeing. So.